show is live on YouTube. Yes, that's right. ACM is live and on now.
I called Sabuco and asked his opinion. I always call Sabuco. Great guy.
I called Sabuco and asked his opinion. He hung up. I called Sabuco again. Some stranger answered. What were we talking about? Can I have ice cream?
Yeah. Who keeps letting that guy call? I mean, it's every other day. Hey, what do you think? What was the mistake? How did this get messed up? No more. Can't take it. If he calls again and he gets through, you're fired. You're fired right now. Just go. Get him out. Out. So, we're back. Welcome to the Sabuco the Sovereign studio again. Tonight, we're going to dig deep into part 2 of Sovereignty, the Sovereign Citizen. Now, if you missed part 1 live, that's cool. Go watch it. Pretty tricky, though. You've got to take part 1. You've got to comprehend it. Then you've got to blend it into tonight's showcase feature of Sovereign Citizen. Understanding the sovereign movement. It's not just understanding the singularity or getting the intro to it. You've got to understand the movement of the whole symbiotic circle of the citizens, the multiple, and the movement itself, the introduction, why, the emotion, the pageantry, the reason, the anti-federalists, the federalists, those that can appreciate the gray area in the world of legislative law and executive power and judicial review, and identify with singularity, sovereignty, state sovereignty, the republic, constitutionalism. It's all a big ball of wax, and we have to figure it out together. That's why we're here. Part 2, the Sovereign. Now, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to. It's okay. You don't have to. It would be cool because it would help the alligator rhythm of YouTube. Now, if you have questions, thoughts, anything that's on your mind, your brain's running, the squirrel cage is running, and you're, Sabuco could really cover this and help everyone understand where I'm coming from. Send it. We will talk about it. Sabuco@protonmail.com. That is the email. Now, the chat's going to be open. We're going to be able to see live what's going on and the thoughts of the community and who's there. We're going to see it. So let's talk about a few things. Number 1, introduction. But before we talk about it, we need to be able to read this, and we need to be able to understand where we're coming from initially. Understanding the sovereign citizen movement. The term sovereign and sovereign citizen, 2 different words combined for a direct meaning, refers loosely, yes, loosely. Do not think that 2 words are a direct mirror of one person or one movement. It's loose. Why is it loose? Individuality, singularity, and comprehension, retention, yes, even to break it down to fundamental education. Fundamental education. No one left behind, right? Well, some people were left behind. Hate to break the news to the world. Some people just don't have it, but that's why we're here, to break it down. Now, organized collection of individuals who hold a set beliefs about the authority of government and the interpretation of law, or laws, plural. Now, we've all had that question. What is probable cause? Why was the 5th not advised? Why were my Miranda rights not given? Why is there a lien on my car? Why? You wouldn't be asking why if you knew why. Thus, education, ability, inferaneous, repetition, repeated, knowledge, validity, reliability, and, man, set precedent for argument in the future. It's a retention thing in your head. So we got to figure that out. Now it's that loose term. The movement is generalized and it's got a lot of attention to it within the Judiciary Review Committee, primarily law enforcement. Now, we're not saying that law enforcement is anti-sovereignty or sovereign citizens are anti-law enforcement. That's not what we're here to argue. We're here to understand the movement, the fundamentals, the birth, the growth, the instillment of the mindset. Why does this even exist? It's kind of like Chef Boyardee. You ever had Chef Boyardee out of a can? Tastes like crap, but you really want to meet the chef to let Boyardee know, boy, you really ruckus this up? Now, why? We need to understand why there's that argument. The movement has generated attention due to the distinctive legal theories and occasional conflict with law enforcement. Now, it's not just law enforcement that the social media plateau of purple-haired spandex-wearing people that monetize and demonetize and, you get money, you don't get money, you get this, you're cool, you're great, we like it. No, we're not arguing at that level. We're arguing at the level of government as a whole. It's generalized that there's a conflict with law enforcement because of one thing, the dollar bill. Law enforcement is money and politics. End of story. Man, Sabuko, why would you say law enforcement is money and politics? Well, in order to run for an office, you got to have a campaign. And thus, when you have a campaign, somebody's got to pay for those really cool signs and those really cool commercials and all those cool outfits. And you got to pay for those campaign managers and all those people that come up with the catchy phrases that all of the candidates say to get your attention, promises, lies, something to trap you in the attention box. Now, that person gets to office because sociologically they were voted in. Now, sovereign citizens vote too. Oh my goodness, a sovereign citizen, the enemy of the world by social media. Some people in society, sovereign. Remember, the Chihuahua is sovereign. Chihuahua knows. Last episode, go watch it. So, if the Chihuahua knows, the law enforcement officer knows, the citizen who is a sovereign singular vote for the one they want in office puts that person in office. All that money is spent. Lobby for money, get money, agencies need money, money sent to the states, dropped all the way down, county, municipality, state level separated, who gets what, who gets this. Think of fire departments in a county, different districts, cities, different districts. Who gets the money? Where does the money go? So, political venue, the people that are voted into a seat of specific office, dollar bills to get there, politics. There would be no law enforcement officer if there was no sociological problem of the acceptance of moral ought not behavior. Those that are put into office are the ones that establish the law based on the creation of the problems in the community. What's good? What's bad? Is it the public health? Is it crime against society? Crime against property? Crime against the person? What's the victimization level? Where is it at? Let's send the National Guard into a city and let the National Guard keep it up because the politics and the money can't do the job because the politics and the money are restricting the level of law enforcement and restricting the level of money to law enforcement to do the job effectively because the upper echelon of the executive body that aid in the legislative word of law and rule are affecting initial contact and judicial review. Oh my goodness. A sovereign citizen should know these things to be able to argue these things. That's a lot of information that shoots like a fire hose. Let me see your thoughts. Put them in the chat. Next, origins and beliefs. Oh my goodness, we've got to break the change here. Origin belief. Personal sovereignty, the idea that individuals have the right to govern themselves without interference from external authorities. Sabuko likes to call this the rule of the fist. Sabuko the sovereign, the rule of the fist. Here's why. Even in that world of judiciary review, legislative body, the word of law, the argument, knowing the entities, knowing the differences, knowing the changes, knowing what's going on, There's a problem. Someone created it. Law enforcement is called. The person that created it can't correct it, but they don't like the way law enforcement is correcting it. Now they're mad. Rule of the fist. That applies to law enforcement. Now take that example and shift it to the sovereign, the individual self-governing word of law, your own law. Now, different communities and sociological entities, cultures, subcultures of cultures, even in the United States and worldwide, police themselves. Anyone out here in the whole wide world of YouTube ever heard of this theory? We'll fix, solve, correct the problem ourselves. Self-govern. Now, the idea of laws that do not culturally fit, that do not culturally apply within a group of people, regardless the group, do not get it locked into your brain or your mind that a sovereign citizen or a sovereign citizens group is only established within one race, one culture, one subculture, one religion, one extra, one here, one A, one B, one C. No. Out and above. The big symbiotic circle. Where is it exactly at? Where's the growth? Where's the birth? Where is it fundamentally coming together? Sharia law, is that sovereignty amongst those that abide by Sharia law? Example, is New York going to crumble? Oh my goodness, we can't wait to see, can we? Is that sovereignty and religion to be, remember, chose or forced? The chosen law, the forced law, the hot spoon. Now, governing oneself, education, ability, articulation to understand the word of law, executive, legislative, judicial review, the initial pretext of context, using the word of law, example, probable cause for a traffic stop. Can you discuss your situation in a courtroom? We're not talking about having court on the side of the road. Nobody's going to do that. No one's going to listen to you. Let's be for real. Let's just be honest with yourself. Stop thinking, well, I'm going to have an argument on the side of the road. 99.9% of people lock up, their brain goes into jello mode, and they can't argue it. There's that 1% out there with the ability to argue this, and there are plenty of examples out there in the social media blended video world you can find. An example would be one motorcyclist that gets pulled over by California Highway Patrol for splitting lanes, but in California Penal Code, a motorcycle can split lanes. But it was dangerous. Nothing mentioned in the California Penal Code about the interpretation of careless and or reckless driving or endangerment of self or other and or material being vehicle, motorcycle, other vehicle, car. It just states dying can split a lane. So that's a good example. Look that up yourself. Does participating in a taxed activity cancel sovereignty? Buying gasoline. You tell me, are you gonna pee in the tank? Are you gonna put water in it? Can you turn water into a hydrogen burnable fuel for your vehicle? Do you have the ability to do so? Sovereignty? Because you chose that yourself, so you've made yourself dependent on the taxation of gasoline. But you will still pay taxes on gasoline for intra and inter-motors commerce, intrastate and internal state, crossing state lines and internal. Thus the argument of a commercial business and driving a car. Motor vehicle versus auto. What is a motor vehicle versus an automobile? A motor vehicle, physical powered, a bicycle. Are you going to pay taxes on riding the bike on the side of the road, but yet you pay taxes for labor, city taxes? What do you think pays for that concrete? What do you think pays for all of that asphalt? So the argument of taxation without representation, but yet taxation for what the sovereign citizen singular would use. Are you buying gas and paying taxes? Did you build that car? Did you make it all on your own? Did you fabricate it, or did you buy those parts because you really needed that? So you conformed into a taxation bracket for self-gain as a sovereign citizen for that self-benefit. Traveling is driving. Traveling is driving. Now you get into the argument of for or for not commerce. Are you making money? Is a passport a driver's license? Is a real ID a real ID? Is the star a real ID? Do you need an IDP, international driving permit? If you're from another country, over here you can drive with a passport, but yet military and IDP can leave the United States, go overseas, and drive with an IDP, a military ID, and a passport. Oh my goodness, the brain coagulation there that is melting down. Now the suite of rule and protective laws is melting and running down the crack of the backside of your brain. It's like automobile insurance. Is it there to keep you safe, or is it there to scrape up the body parts off of the highway because hazmat cleanup is really expensive? Argument. Now, we're not here to argue the good and the bad, but we're here to get the ideas. We're here to get the thoughts from the viewer. Dimensions. What makes one sovereign? It is the belief, the ability to argue and interpret the rules and the laws that are set to govern the people, govern your society, govern you. There's always a gray area, there's always a loophole. It does not singularly entitle you with the word of, I'm a sovereign citizen. You're sovereign already. Already. Education, argumental theory in the set correct moment, not on the side of the highway. That's not where it happens. Let me see. You can't govern one's health. Ooh, no, you can't govern one's health. That's choice. Individual. Now we get into a whole new bracket of understanding. We could argue one's health into extreme case articulation and Supreme Court argument. Let me throw some fire in the sovereign thought tank. Roe v. Wade. Opinion, send it back to the states. 11 weeks or 6 weeks. Which is murder? 11 weeks or 6 weeks? Which trimester is death and which one is not? Ooh. Law enforcement, law, politics, money. Where's the financial gain? Arguing the health factor and being correct and being able to argue it with set precedent, reliability, framework from the past that has been argued all the way to the tippy top of the spear of judicial review in the United States, which should be checks and balances, the Supreme Court arguing using the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, set precedent, reliability, case venue framework to argue just one case. That is the sovereignty of knowing how to represent yourself as a sovereign citizen, being able to argue in correct format, argue those laws, argue the authority, argue it with every example that has credibility and validity that you can, especially in a courtroom with a set framework that had credibility and validity, and one was acquitted. Yeah, acquitted, like, you're free to go, bye-bye. We did the big F-y up, and yeah. Please don't civilly hit us. Civil, deep pockets. Criminal, criminal. The majority of law is not criminal law. There is more juvenile law than there is adult criminal law. More juvenile law than there is adult criminal law, and there's more business law than either one of those combined together. Remember, Sabuko the Sovereign said, do your own research on that. Let's move on. Interesting. Keep your comments going. Keep them flowing. Now, origins belief. Personal sovereignty, individual. The idea that individuals have the right to govern themselves without governmental external influence. Rejection of government authority. Now, that word rejection doesn't mean, oh, we hate you. No, I reject you. I got a good buddy of mine that, he just came back from the Himalayas. Says he was training with the Yetis, whatever, man. Anyway, Self-sovereignty, rejection of authority. That does not mean you dissociate from society as a whole. It does not mean you totally dissociate from the rule of law, legislative, executive, venue of judicial. You're still going to have that in your own entity, your own movement, your own collection of individuals that fundamentally think like you, reason like you, appreciate the world in the same light or venue that you do, the same way. So you're not dissociating from everything, but you reject the authority that imposes on you singularly. And if you're singularly in a group of people, sovereign citizens that have the same ideology, I did not say rhetoric or edict, twisted ideology, but are of the same ideology of you. That's the argument of the authority that is imposed in a singular group. And always remember this, when you hear sovereign citizen, do not just think one race, one creed, one age group, one gender, multifaceted. Terrorism, is it terrorism in the United States or the United States entering the other country to prevent terrorism, and now the United States is viewed as the terrorists in another country? It's an example. Yay! We won the battles in GWAT. We kicked that butt, won a lot of battles, did not win the war. Still going on to this day. It's GWAT in the past, now it's going to be something else in a couple of months. If not tomorrow, not next year, not next week, who knows? If not tonight, nobody knows. Government authority there dropped the ball like a hot potato. Yeah, we're out. Drop it, gone. Now we got the same problem again. Sovereignty, understanding that and being able to argue something like that. As CM said, health, traveling, driving. Is traveling, driving? Is a bicycle an operated vehicle? Of course it is. Human operation. It's not motor driven. Now we need to articulate that. How do the rules of the road apply? One must understand the word of legislative law, state statute, penal code, title, whatever it's called in the state that you're in. Ooh, the key word, state, sovereign citizen, recognizing one's ability, recognizing one's movement, recognizing one's association, sovereign to the state, but yet not the Republic of 50. There's a reason there are mass exoduses from specific states into other states. Legislative venue, judicial review, executive decision that violates moral ought to, moral ought not. Let's put the National Guard on the streets of Washington to where it's morally being ran wrong by a partisan side. So now we're going to use a rule of law, a set precedent that has been used before. An example would be the United States Marine Corps in a city to enforce law. Trump, bad, angry orange man. But no one rolls back the historical clock. Obama used the Marine Corps in the United States in the cities. Yes, the left and the right. The broken, dirty bird, both sides do the same thing. But yeah, we can argue. Good, bad, sovereignty, being able to argue it and understanding the difference. Rejection of the authority, rejection of the push that you must eat that hot spoon because it was forced, it was not elected, and it was not voted by you. Great. Sociologically, the masses of the sheep voted for ignorance. You didn't. Why should it apply to you? If a state can tell the NFA, the ETF, the federal government, go kick a rock, why can't you? But argue it correctly, the way it would be done in jurisdictional venue of jurisdictional districts of court. State versus Colorado State. Woo! That's a whole conversation and a whole show all in itself. You know, Rye, I think we're going to do that one day. Shoot me an email, sabuco@proton.com, protonmail.com. Remind me of that. After this is done, this whole 3-part series of sovereignty, we're going to bust that open like a can of worms and use it as a case study and case example. Excellent. That's what the chat's for. Ring your bell. Yes. Awesome. Now, unique legal interpretations. This is where the goodness comes in. It's where the goodness comes in. Sovereign citizens often employ unconventional legal tactics. So does a lawyer. Hold on, let me say that again. So does a lawyer, and there's a difference between counsel, lawyer, and attorney. Going to law school does not mean you're qualified to argue for defense at all spectrums and all levels in that courtroom. It just means you have a piece of paper that implies a graduate school. It does not mean you're competent or capable. Plenty of examples out there. I don't know, a top blue ribbon, top of the food chain university, the head, the president, plagiarizes AI from a judiciary review judge, but yet they went to law school, but it's found out, but you couldn't write your own thesis or dissertation. Oh my goodness, now you have to steal from a judge to make yourself look good, especially on your Viate. Most people would say resume, but you know how it goes. As long as nobody catches you. Understanding the scope and the limitation of the law and understanding the unconventional tactics. You have to use unconventional warfare in an unconventional war. And let's break it down. It is the system, judiciary review, legislative, against you in a courtroom. Those tactics are being established, have been established. They've been built. They're being ruled upon. Why? Rules of the court. Rules of the court. Rules of criminal court, rules of business, rules of taxation, rules of general sessions, rules of juvenile. Every state has its own set standard documented as rules of court. Do your own research. Type it in your magic box. Type it in your idiot box. Rules of the court for the state that you live in. Understanding those and knowing the tactics and how they're manipulated. Knowing case study, case review for specific cases that would perhaps be equal or a set precedent to the one that you're currently in, or you know somebody. Be that council of sovereignty to independently attack that case with indirect and direct tactics that you know are going to work. In a nutshell, you need a good representative counsel attorney, or you need a good representative counsel lawyer. Separate. Law degree does not give you skill in every specific area. It's kind of like saying I'm going to use a real estate area, the attorney or a lawyer that deals with property sale to argue my way out of a capital crime, a felony. They have no clue what the hell's going on. Nothing. Unconventional tactics. Legal aspects, such as filing, liens. Now, a lot of people would say fake liens. What is a lien by definition of penal code, state statute, legislative law, federal rule of law? They're all different. Kind of like driving, kind of like that old driver's license. Have to have a real ID, a star to fly or not within a specific state. Specific states have their own venues of how things work. It's all different. So you've got to know how to find the critical answers. Crayons, does the flag hanging make a difference, i.e. gold fringe? Yes, sir, it 100% does. That's another good topic. Either a, true executive presentation or a true executive branch release, or something that's fake, something that's a movie cast, something that's a decision swayer, an influence. Something to get the masses to think, it's official, but yet it's not. That would be like stating, is the U.S. flag an official flag if all of the stars are shifted? No, it's not. Think about that. The fringe, executive, why it's their historical venue, the purpose and the use of the flags for pageantry and imagery of executive body and representation of a republic. There is a difference there. Does the government in a whole, do entities understand it? Who knows? Does the Republican Party get it? Does the left get it? Does the Democrat, does the right get it? Does the libertarian that argues, leave me alone, no victimization, I'll be a victim, but yet I'm not going to do anything about it, so libertarians kind of worthless. The corporation created by the Act of 1871. Good. Act of 1871. A good cognitive thought argument with research intent. Now, that is a sovereign topic for understanding as application from 1871 applied from the corporate separation and the corporate takeover. Yes, I said the corporate takeover. Politics and money, legislative branch, law, moral ought to, moral ought not. Is it okay to write your own lien for business or fair and unfair practice? The question of some states taking a verbal contract versus a written contract or accepting both verbal and written for a specific amount of money, which would make it a felony, which would be civil argument, but then if it's found with that, then it can be, I don't know, false pretense. Saying you're going to perform an action, accepting money, not performing the action. Now it's a civil, but yet it's false pretense. But if it goes the other way, one does work and one has a civil suit against them for a specific amount of money. Now it's just, I don't know, it's a misdemeanor, pay me some cash and all the bills in a freaking civil courtroom. But then it's set up for an appellate court in a higher court, which is circuit court. Or depending on the state, it's not circuit court, it would be a higher magistrate name. Something cool, Super Mouse Court, Super Bull Court, whatever the state venue titles that court. Now, it's in that court with or without choice or venue of jury. And it's still up to judiciary review for that jury, the judge. Oh my gosh, what if that judge just doesn't like you because you know more than the judge does? You're too sovereign. You're too intellectually comprehensive in your own brain to understand the words that are coming out of judiciary review mouth that would be the executive level of the set court that you're about to be in, and you supersede them knowledge-wise. And suddenly judiciary review finds that out pre-existing or prior to the court. And, hey, let's kill the jury. Let's just make it a closed session, no jury. Make sure I got a whole bunch of bailiffs in here so I don't look stupid. Yeah. The manipulation of law enforcement, too. Challenge subject matter jurisdiction. Exactly right. Said right, you're on point. Challenge it. If you can challenge it, challenge it. But let's be for real here too. If you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar and you know you got caught with your hand in the cookie jar, sack up, potato cup, you did it. There's a difference between forced and accepted. Forced and accepted. The hot spoon crammed down because it was not something that was jurisdictionally voted upon legislatively by the collective body. Thus, the big argument of certification of the vote, January 6th, all comes to light at the end of the day. Was it a hot fork or a dull spoon? Now, liens, identification, documents. We could talk forever. What is a real document? I gave examples. Rolling back. If you have to hear them, hit rewind after it's over. But I'll be nice and cover it again. Driver's license, real ID, ID with the star for actually air travel with the real ID. What really makes real ID? Do you have to get real ID? Can you get the real ID through the mail? Or do you have to actually go to the station or to the driver's license depot? Is it an internationally permitted driver's license? Real ID is compared to a passport. Can you drive with a passport internal United States as you could external United States? If you do not have your driver's license on, so much that one would have to argue there is the difference. Intercommerce, intracommerce, intercommerce, intracommerce, internal, external, crossing jurisdictional state boundary lines. One state says yes, one state says no. Some jurisdictional reviews, the United States Federal District Court of Law, dying must have a driver's license. But where do you find that since the 10th Amendment, what is not covered federally, and it's not really direct, but the government does federally, it's in the word of law for federal grounds. Does that apply on a county road, old dirt road? Farmers can drive without it. Uh-oh, now we've got an argument and we've got a question. How do we really break that down? It is, what is the extension of the road we're on, the contact of the road? Is it intra or inter? Which one is it? How does it apply? How do we attach the federal rule of law and the 10th Amendment if it's not covered by the federal jurisdiction or federal word of law? By the 10th Amendment, the state shall self-govern. But individual sovereignty, remember this episode and past episodes, sovereign citizens, citizen of state, not federal. Man, are Native American tribes sovereign? Yes. That's only one answer. Yes. Yes, 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 and continued yes. But that's a whole new topic too. Declaration of Independence, 1971, 1972, the articulative under the actual judiciary and executive rule that all Native Americans, 1971, 1972 timeframe, were thus recognized as full-blown American. But it took that long to do it. So, sovereignty. Thus, all the casinos and all the money supporting the actual reservations themselves and not dishing out a nickel to the federal government. Why do you think everybody that likes the casinos loves getting into the res? Go throw those quarters in. Not going to get taxed on that crap. You walk out with it and you got jingly pockets. Until you go buy gasoline for that truck, then you got to pay taxes for the gasoline because you bought taxes on the items and the truck itself and repairs and everything else. But you're still going to pay taxes, so I don't know. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're still going to lose all that tax-free winning by the federal government since it's a sovereign institution, sovereign territory, sovereign land, sovereign business that you're not going to pay taxes to the federal government. I did not say tribal, did I? I did not say res, did I? I said federal government. So now you're in a trick bag again. Now you have to understand and know how to tactically and strategically tackle the law and tackle the environment that you're in, thus being a sovereign citizen. The word sovereign citizen does not mean you're a person walking around the street saying, it doesn't apply to me, I'm singular, I'm sovereign. That is zero. That is a moron. That is a fool. That, in real layman terms, is a buffoon. Sovereignty is here first, knowing how the whole cookie falls apart and breaks when you tactically, with legislative knowledge, executive knowledge, judiciary review knowledge, attack the cookie. Attack the cookie starts to weaken, it starts to break. You're no longer a manipulative victim. It's kind of like a plea agreement. 20 years maximum, but we'll give you a plea if you go ahead and, I don't know, plead to being guilty. Oh, we've got 5 felonies. We'll wrap it all up into one time, one sentence if you'll plead, or you can risk getting full for all 5. Thus, do you just want a lawyer, or do you want a criminal defense attorney as counsel? What do you really want? Do you want the public defender? Guarantee you'll get the public defender. The shittiest one out there. Yep. Accept the plea. Make my job easy so I can get that state pay and that state pension and that retirement. Because it's a public defender. They're working for you. They're working for you to ensure you get 3 hots and a cot. Now, common practices. Let's go to common practices. Let's go to common practices. Let's see here. Common practices. Refusal to pay taxes. Oh my goodness, taxes on the actual. Did you take a trip last week? Did you go to Disneyland? I'm sovereign. I'm going to argue the government. Oh, I've got to go to Florida for vacation. Oh, I'm in this state, got to pay. I got to get there. Let's go ahead and pay them taxes. You put that credit card in. Yeah, you're paying taxes. Do not sit here and think that you're fully 100% committed sovereign to the way of, I'm not paying anything. Yes, you are. You're paying selectively. Selectively. That's how you're doing it. The way they continue to make money off the bond, off the bond created, the bond factory. The bond, the value of money, the value of the gold, the value of the accreditation. Oh, the Department of Treasury. Oh, the bank. How does it all work? How does it all tie in together? You electively select it yourself. What are you really paying taxes for? How much are you paying taxes? Because I hate to break the whole egg and be the rooster that stepped on it and cracked it before the chicken hatched out. But Even the hardcore sovereign citizens pay taxes. They just don't want to admit it. They're paying taxes, but it's select. You're going to pay taxes on fuel. Hate to break the news to you. Hate to bust it off like a hot icicle. You're going to pay it. Unless you want to ride a bicycle or walk or get a buggy and a horse. Heck, the Mennonites and the Amish do it. Well, not all Mennonites, but Amish do it. What are you going to do? One must know how to properly contract. All courts in the U.S. are contract courts. Yes, now, contractual courts. I like that. That's a good one. Let's use that as an example. Here we go. Let's use narcotics. Let's use drug court. Now, I know systematically around the United States, everybody's heard of drug courts. Little Timmy got caught with, a dime bag in the car, whatever it may be, However many charges are being wrapped in, there's the narcotic side. So they're not going to send its first offense, and boom, shifts over drug court. The drug court was started in Texas. It's not an entity that any other state can say, oh, we claimed it, we made it, it's ours, it worked so great. It started in Texas. The majority of drug courts are contractual out for monetization, testing, employment. They're contracted out. A lot of people don't know these things. Let's make a quick mic adjustment here. A lot of people don't know these things. So, contractual. What entities of the courts are actually contracted out? Contract, public defenders. Ooh, yeah, there's a contract written there between the actual state and the region that they're actually, or jurisdictional venue, that they're being a public defender for. Admiralty versus maritime law. Ooh, maritime law. Man, those are two different entities. Let's think judicial review. Let's even roll it all the way back to maritime law. Common laws we talked about before, or set legislative law. Commoner, king, maritime, seaside law, jurisdiction, but yet the United States still runs under maritime law under historical venue, but yet we're going to use judiciary review and argue, yeah, we need to have the right of a legislative seat to be put into that executive position to actually argue moral not, moral ought to, moral ought not, admiralty law to aid to more maritime law. Thus, we can argue it to the Second Amendment also. Do we need more gun laws, or we just simply need to enforce the ones that we have? But yet, keep stacking the cards. 52 deck turns into 82, 92, 102, 202. Knowing how to fundamentally, tactitionally argue it all the way down to the grassroots of the judiciary review problem in a courtroom, in the world, in a common argument. A common argument, or a common, when I say argument, I don't mean like a fist-blowing fight. I mean cognitive argument, scholarly argument, being able to argue cognitively what sovereignty is. Exemptions. What is an exemption? What makes you exempt? Knowing those exemptions. Oh, here's a good one. Let's go all the way back to the argument of COVID. COVID, the death, the rhino. Ooh. The old DNA test that didn't prove jack crap. The guy even said it himself, the one who invented it. That's a whole new thing. And, I think I'm going to send my buddy, Sabuko the White, an email and have him talk about that, because I don't think the majority of society even understand that, let alone the separance of mitochondrial paternal DNA testing and how let's not even break that down. He taught me that one day. That was like an 8-hour conversation. And trust me, I was tired up here. So, back on track. Now, the law, jurisdictional venue, how it's created, getting down to the grassroots of it. Common practices. That should be a common practice for everyone. What applies to you? What does not apply to you? Are you truly sovereign in your ability to argue it? And we're not talking about the bad episodes. Police versus sovereign. Police versus that. No, we're not talking about the clickbaits or the one that make money. What about the ones that actually argue in a courtroom their own sovereignty, what does apply, what does not apply, and they walk out of the courtroom victorious? Oh, the prosecutor's like, what just happened? You're fired, you're fired. ADA, you're going back to school, you're done. Where's the officer? You screwed this up. because the one that's in a courtroom argued better than the judiciary review. And yeah, argued better than the contractual work too that came into the judiciary review at the higher plateau. Scary sometimes, isn't it? And you know, there's a lot of people that are going to be watching saying, oh my God, I work in the judicial system. This guy's talking stuff and I'm thinking about it and it's right because I see it every day. And oh, truth be darned. So, more common practices. Common practice number 2, challenging traffic laws. Sovereign citizens frequently contest traffic citations that and may result in obtaining driver's license or, vehicle registration, driver's license, whatever, however you want to argue it, okay? Now, bottom line to this, we talked about this a little bit ago, okay? State connect, internal state, where, what, when, know the laws and how they apply to you. Are you in a car on a roadway that uses taxation dollars? And your taxation dollars, because you're paying taxes when you go into Wally World, the worst freaking store in the world, and you buy a bag of bananas and you're paying 7%, 9%, whatever it may be. Now, those lucky states that do not have food or commodity taxes on those things, man, those are the real sovereign states. Those are the states that practice sovereignty for the benefit of the betterment of a society. But you can get an EBT card because you don't have a job. And we're not talking about disability or those that really need it. We're talking about little Bob, little Tito, little stomachache, little shish kebab on the corner with a 40 using their sleeve as a napkin, drinking 5 of them down because somebody's letting them use an EBT card and putting it under something else and they're doing nothing. But yet, you're paying all the taxes on that. Who's paying for that? Sovereignties of states. If a state can do it, why can't you? Argumentative. Ticket and commerce. Well, what the hell do you think a ticket is? What do you think it is? Somebody had to sit down in a legislative seat and decide, oh my gosh, we're going to make this new traffic law. Who's going to pay for all that enforcement of that new traffic law? It's all commerce, politics, and money is law enforcement, judicial review, legislative word of law. Period. Done. We're not arguing moral ought to, bad in society, good society. That is not what we're arguing here. We already know there's good and bad in society. Good and bad, all races. Good and bad, all ages, good and bad, and the 2 genders, good and bad, culture, subculture. We're not arguing that. We're arguing the commerce, the politics, the money used to push the legislative law in jurisdictional review. And what about the frayed interpretation in a jurisdictional review? An example, the Innocence Project. Yeah, and I went the Innocence Project because it's like a cap pop off of your bottled Coca-Cola. The Innocence Project. First year in device out there looking at cases. Over 200 people released from prison, not jail, prison that had been there for 10, 12, some 20 years. False imprisonment. Because the technology was there before jurisdictional legislative review was even going to consider allowing law enforcement agencies to use that. Why? Because of the money, the gain, kind of like Big Pharma. Why is it you can get medication from India that costs you pennies on the dollar, but it costs you a ton of dollars in the United States? COVID. What was it you want to see who's really paying attention? What were the 2 things that you were not supposed to get or have or use for that rhinovirus, the flu? What were the 2 things that you could get overseas for pennies on the dollar? But the amount of money here was skyrocketed so much that your common person on the street couldn't afford it because they had gas to pay, the taxes for that pay, the taxes on that car, the taxes on food, the taxes for crayons, the taxes for paper, the taxes for notebooks to send their children to school. Were you sovereign enough to actually know how to outsource? Everyone confuses sovereignty with some 6 foot tall, massive giant of a person that is Thor. Thine shall not tread on me, because I shall crush, eat like cookie. No, that's not it. It's up here. It's knowing how to shift, how to move, how to be the smoke in society, knowing how to be the gray man, gray woman. Yeah, I said man, woman. I didn't say anything else. Unless, you're an executive member of the federal rule of government that can't give the definition of woman and then argue it down. Are you saying woman, girl, or are you arguing female gender? Ooh, that would be a sovereign representative of what? Executive legislative body of power. Oh my gosh. But no, we didn't have that. We had let me shift it with a new direction or ideology or with a little bit of edict so I can throw some rhetoric out there to gain attention, knowing the difference in it, knowing how to argue it. Put your thoughts in the comments. Drop them in there. So let's shift. Let's keep up. So now we're doing common practices. Let's do common practices again. Let's do something else here. Common practices. Oh, legal documents. Numerous documents in an attempt to overwhelm the legal system or assert beliefs. It's okay for the courts and lawyers to do appellate appeals and all kind of retention for, petition for suppression of evidence, petition for this, law enforcement, to do an underlying facts and circumstances affidavit for warrant, so that they don't violate the Fifth, and then get the warrant and have all kind of copies to serve the judge, the actual court gets a copy of it. Overwhelm, but yet the judicial system loses its mind when a citizen sends a flurry of the same thing right back. It puts fear in the judiciary review branch. Now suddenly, the legislative branch gets word of that. Now we must make something new to limit the citizen, to suppress the citizen's ability to self-reliance, self-growth, self-discipline, self-argumentative theory on our own interpretation of the legal system and what we must do to protect ourselves from a broken system, a corrupt system, 2 dirty birds, 4 dirty birds, if you use all the acronyms that you want to use, governmentally, bipartisan, partisan, argue it how. It's all different. Gerbils should be spinning on that daily basis when you hear these things and witness these things that happen in society that are questionable. No more clickbait. Courts will never refer to anyone as man or woman. They're all persons and individuals when defined in law. It's not what you think. Man or woman. Well, you got some credibility to that statement, but yet, in that courtroom, that identity, it matters. That conviction, that's where it matters. Outside of the word of law, probable cause, enforcement, no, it's just a human being, a member of society. John Doe, Jane Doe, Cletus, Bubba, Chris, Wanda, Janet, who knows? It's that entity, that citizen, or even some cases in 2025, that non-citizen. It's written for the moral all too, based on sociological vote. The legislative body doesn't care who seated them there, how many male, how many female. It's the citizen count. No one's keeping track of the gender, the religion, the age, unless you're doing research and a statistical review and a meta-analysis evaluation, which would be a longitudinal study. A longitudinal study means time, a longitude, a lot of time. Now, sovereignty, knowing all of that, knowing how to do your own research to argue it and take all of these brilliant comments and argue it into one refined symbiotic circle that represents oneself in judiciary review, scholarly and cognitive argument. Argument meaning that conversation. It's an argument. It's a phenomenon. Phenomenon being a problem. Recognizes these things. What are the documents that just have a gray area? They're dirty birds. They're broken. Anyone ever gotten a ticket? You can't read the cop's name. Can't read the officer's name. Looks like Dr. Kevorkian or Dr. Fauci signed it, or a drunk Dr. Fauci on cocaine or crack signed it. Can't read the name. You ever heard of anyone arguing that out when there's no video? There's no officer that shows up. Suddenly the judge can't even tell who in the hell wrote the ticket, and it's out the door. See you, goodbye. Sorry for wasting your time. Now you're out of money. Now you're out of work. You're out of time off. Your own personal time. What's the retaliation against the court? With or without prejudice? Oh, now you got to argue this. What are the state limitations of law to where the judge and the officer are held harmless? Now, some would argue, oh, that never happened. Wrong. Do your own research. Yes, it has. I've seen it with Sabuco's own eyes. Not once, not twice, multiple times. Now, scholarly research, inferaneous ability. You've done it. You've argued it. You were victorious. Now you can use it again to train, teach more citizens, thus the sovereign citizen movement. Argument of judiciary review, legislative boundary of law, executive decision that applies to the executive body and not the citizen below the executive body. How many people took a knee? Take a knee to an executive decision. Executive order. I'm going to sign an executive order. This is going to happen right now. Well, does it really apply to you? Or is it an executive body making an executive decision to bring in another organization that runs underneath its own executive body to do whatever that executive body is being ordered to do because they're taking a knee to the executive body that's giving an executive body a directive? Wow, that's an even deeper thought, isn't it? How deep does the rabbit hole go for the knee taker or the hot spoon? The citizen. We're not talking about the whole movement as a whole, but we're talking about the citizen and how the citizen makes the movement. The citizen singularity we will talk about in part 3. This is the one citizen that collaborates symbiotically with the other citizens that makes the movement. This is not the introduction. That was last week. This is the one citizen, the movement, the collaboration, building it. Everything that's been discussed here, imagine in your brain, take the hot spoon out, hundreds, thousands, the same ideology. Not in a bad way, but in a confrontational way, scholarly, argumentative, that can argue fault in the system. It's a democratic society. No, it's not. It's a republic. Democracy republic, not a democratic society. Period. If you can't read your own historical venue of set precedent in the word of law, rule of law, something's wrong. It's kind of like the Supreme Court. Even the Supreme Court was smart enough to get away from the Blue Book of Law as a total reference. Much like a sovereign citizen would argue, the use of the Blue Book of Law has no reliability, no set precedent, no framework under new venue without research. Then the APA goes to, the Supreme Court. Use us because we rely on credibility, validity, framework, reliability, argumentative pretext for phenomenon, much like a sovereign agency. But it's the APA, American Psychological Association. Think what you want to think, DSM-4, DSM-5. Oh, shit, what happened to the DSM-4? Down in flames, 3 to 5. What a genius idea to confuse society. It's a sovereign move in an organization. Take a knee, accept it, society. Don't be sovereign. Now, documents, attempts, the flurry. What do you think the flurry is of the legislative body to get a bill passed? Thousands of pages. Oh, the big, beautiful bill. Like a big cheeseburger that one just wants to put mustard and mayonnaise and relish and I don't know. Imagine how many pages that thing was. Does anybody know how many pages that thing was? Somebody actually post up there if you know how many pages that thing was and the detail that was written into it, with intent to hide and without intent to hide, to affect another. Page 22 affects page 2005. Things that people would miss. Research. The Shiro Jordan 2001 Tom and edition with Jordan Public Traffic, California Supreme Court. We're going to have to do that. That's a new one on me there, Rye. We're going to have to push that one and look at it. Mail that to me. This is a request from Sabuko the Sovereign. Mail that to me. Sabuko@protonmail.com so I can review that myself and compare it with other framework reliability and set precedent for a case that would be argued under the same limitations and or statute or uniformity of judicial final review or decision. Thanks. Let's move on. Let's go to legal and social. Legal and social. Legal and social actions of the sovereign citizens can sometimes lead to encounters with law enforcement, judiciary systems, blah, blah, blah. We know this stuff, all right? Now, the impact on the community. We know all of this, legal and social impact. We'll talk a little bit about the legal, but we could sit here for days, months, weeks, years, an eternity and talk about multiple aspects of it, argue it, what one does accept for sovereignty, what one does not accept for sovereignty. Impacts on communities. Actions can strain legal resources and complicate legal proceedings. That's true. But is that not what the judicial system is for? It's the criminal justice system, not the victimization justice system. Victimology and victimization is minute in the CJ world, minute in the judiciary review world. If it's a fear of legislative body, executive, if it's a fear of judiciary review that it's being bombarded tactically in legal resource to argue for oneself, as the Constitution implies one should be able to, the Bill of Rights is there for that, for your counsel to argue it. Why can't you? Oh, it's fearful now. We've got a set limitation judiciary, executive seating to argue it for you. But the world goes into a panic when the judicial system says, hey, something else. Oh my gosh, we got something else bombarded that now we have to argue down or out. Fear. Let me see, Wright's putting up more cases. But there you go, there's the perfect example. We've got 3 cases right here in the chat. I'm sure there could be hundreds, thousands. More argumentative review, set framework, decision, set precedent, and a judiciary review. Region, county, city, state, federal. What do you think that attorney is supposed to be doing for you in a courtroom? For you. Give me a like, give me a thumbs up if you have had or know of someone that had to get an attorney and that was a bad attorney. They did not argue it correctly. There was no tactical bombardment of set precedent, case review, case study, judicial decision that would apply to the case or to the actual incident itself. That one is supposed to be represented for, or self-representation, representative as to themselves in a courtroom. Give me a thumbs up or give me a hit if you know anybody that had something like that happen. Thus, here we go. Legal resources, knowing your legal resources. We're not talking about a jailhouse prison lawyer, okay? We're talking about sociologically in society, someone who's out here, who knows, who practices it, who actually educates themselves cognitively, scholarly, to be able to go cognitively, episodic memory, recall, this happened here, I've got the framework, I've got the set precedent, I've got the inferaneous ability to aid and to argue the case. And we're not talking about on the side of the road. That's a dummy's pretext. That's just, you're making the whole show a worse tamale as you're standing there. You're digging a hole deeper for yourself, period. It's not personal. Move on. Be the superhero in the courtroom. Be the one that makes everyone pause with hesitation because you have interrupted the judiciary review system with legal resource counter. Be that. That is sovereignty, self-independence, regardless of where you're at. We're not talking about self-independence, arguing a speeding ticket on the road. Shut up. No. Get in that courtroom. You're not arguing with one. That's not court. That's not judicial review. That's a guy or a girl out there doing a job, feeding families, having a career, trying to get home alive. Yeah, I said it, trying to get home alive with all the nutbag wackos out there on the planet, running around doing dumb stuff. Same thing. That's not the courtroom. You want to be the one to prove sovereignty, do it in the courtroom for everyone. The judiciary review sees it. Now it becomes, oh, we're discombobulated, we're in fear now because someone came in and crucified this venue of judiciary review. Who are we going to take it out on? It won't be you because you walked out the winner. You were the one with the shiny halo of victory. Knowing how to be a sovereign citizen versus the interpretation in what social media shows you a sovereign citizen is. Get the two fundamentally separated in what they really are. Oh, Big Bowl of the Corn, you're back. Got a question. You may have covered this already, so if so, my apologies. No need. But what is your opinion on self-defense insurance, like USCCCA? Is it wise to invest in this? All right, that's a good question. Let's talk about sovereignty and self-defense. Good one. You answered the question in the question. Self-defense insurance versus self-defense counsel. USCCA has a historical venue of not covering people because of the probability, questionability of violating some state statute or being outside of USCCA's regulatory and or because it's an insurance company, so they fall under an insurance commission of control, something that is outside of that boundary of coverage. Therefore, they have refused or will not cover someone. And any of you could do your research, use USCCA, someone that was not covered, even though they had USCCA, had it for years, whatever. USCCA wouldn't cover it. But still, that's just insurance. That's not legal counsel, prosecutory protection, or prosecutorial review. When that insurance company says, yeah, we're going to provide you with an attorney, one of our attorneys. Do you really want their attorney? They're going to pick an attorney for you. It's kind of like being convicted of murder. Notice I didn't say homicide. All homicide is death, means and matter. It's like being convicted of murder, and now you're going to sit for an appeal because your attorney sucked. Do you want that guy representing you again in an appeal? He sucked. Now, do you want USCCA's attorney, lowest bottom dollar, knowing that they've already, not once, not twice, but multitudes of times, refused to aid and, as their insurance bond with their client, refused to represent them as insurance to pay for legal representation? My advice, if you want to have it, it's cool. My advice personally, if you've got that, make sure you have an attorney on retainer that is outside affiliated away from USCCA. If you want to have both, that's great, but you better have a good attorney too, because there's no guarantee that that company itself, it's just an insurance company, they're not judicial review or representation in a courtroom, and they're going to select how you are represented. They are going to select the quality of your representation. Ponder on that. Do you want them to pick from 1 to 10 a level 4 to represent you, or do you want to get out there and find true judicial representation, an attorney that's level 10? But USCCA will pick Bob. Bob's been there for 20 years. He's great. His case scenario is 60-40. Yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda, iffy, whatever. Who cares? We got your money. You got your card. You got your little cell phone app where you can go with your pistola and your gun. Yep. Oh, you didn't know that? You took that weapon into this environment? Oh, you violated state law, not your state? Yep. Reciprocity law, you have a concealed carry, but you violated the small, minute thing that you had no freaking clue existed because you didn't go into that USCC app and rifle and read the laws. But USCCA, you trusted them. They did not have that in their little list of laws and rules to obey and all of this. You missed it. Now they're going to drop you and they're not going to cover you. They're like, did you look at the app? Yeah, I did. Well, there you go. We're not going to drop. We're not going to cover you. You drop the ball yourself. So, toodaloo. Bye-bye. Yeah, get an attorney. It's cool to have it, great. It's a good backup, but it's insurance. It's not legal. It's not judicial review protection. That's not what that is. That is insurance. I hope I helped you out on that. So, anyway, social implications. This right here was a social implication. Sovereignty, knowing the difference in the two, knowing how to argument, knowing how to protect those that are in the same ideology that you are. Look at Rye, multiple cases we have to look at and review in the future to be able to apply them and argue them in a new episode of, possible violation in the future and individual representation, the collective of the sovereign citizen and the sovereign citizens, the movement. It's not getting out there in a white van with a whole bunch of freaking stovepipe smoke machines that launch projectiles thinking you're a tough guy. That is not sovereignty. That is not. Sovereignty's here first. Here. How can you claim sovereignty if you really don't have it here and you cannot be victorious in that judicial review? There's no way you can say, I'm sovereign, and you can't argue it and win. Therefore, you're not truly sovereign. I know that hurts feelings. I know it chaps the rear end, but it's the truth. And all of you know it. If you can't argue it when it really counts, if you can't come out victorious or stump the system with that onslaught of knowledge, how truly sovereign are you for self-representation in a governmental institution? You may want to get away from it, but you've got to educate yourself first, and you've got to expand and grow beyond the system and beyond the institution, knowing the positive and the fault and the flaws and the historical venue of failure in the system to use it against the system. The system it could be any system, judicial review in a city, state, county, federal government. We're not talking about breaking the law. We're talking about having it in your head, brain, inferaneous, memory, knowledge, repetition. Being a sovereign citizen is not the time for an impromptu comedian make up a joke, an impromptu puppet show master. Go, here's a knife and some string, go make a puppet and put us a show on that's going to suck. Inferaneous, repetition. That is where the sovereignty develops. Implications, legality, and sociological development, and how does it affect society? Any more comments? Put them in. If you got any more comments or any more topics about sovereignty that you want to hear about, send them. Sabuco, protonmail.com. Got a few more things we're going to cover here before we close this fantastic episode out of Sovereignty Part 2. Let's cover addressing the movement. Education and awareness. Oh my goodness, everybody would think education and awareness is how spooky is it? How bad is it? No, that's not it. That is not real sovereignty. We're not talking about retard mumbling morons that are, extremists that run around as I'm a self-help, special coach of, self-motivation on how to be sovereign and be your own king and queen of your castle and, eat, deer poop. No, shut up. That's not it. Sovereignty's up here. The media, social media, society twists sovereignty. Now, let's think of the country. Let's think of 1771, 72, 73, 74, 75. Did not yet the colonies want sovereignty from a tyrannical government? Give me a thumbs up if you agree. Sovereignty goes back. It's not just singularly and here right now. No one said that the development of an institution was perfect. There are flaws because human beings practice moral ought to, moral ought not, good, bad, sometimes the ugly. Understanding what status and standing is and will the court have acknowledged you and have the above mentioned? Depends on the venue of court that you're in. If the court understands that you have the capability of self-representation. Now, there is something called comprehension. Think of interview and interrogation. Everyone's heard of Miranda rights, the Fifth Amendment, but what if one does not comprehend or cannot cognitively understand what it is in a whole that one has the right to refuse, even if one has revoked and decided to answer questions and suddenly wants to refuse and invoke until counsel, or has revoked and then later down the road wants to invoke and it has to go to the ADA because the ADA is fearful over the twist and the use of invoke fifth versus revoke fifth to talk to law enforcement or investigators or an agency later down the road when they're either in custody or still under investigation. What status or status and standing is and will the court even acknowledge? It's all based on you. That's why it starts here. It's not the cool 6-foot tough guy that I'm a sovereign citizen. Look at my cool. No, it's not. You could drive a Prius and be a sovereign citizen because it's here. Here. We're not talking about a gun-slinging, plate-carrying super guy. Brains. We're not talking about a Navy space shuttle Rocky Delta door gunner. We're talking about brain power, the ability to argue it, self-sufficient. It's kind of like USCCA, yep, said that. USCCA, the bottle cap blows off again. Oh my God, that's just not just insurance, and I'm going to get a whatever attorney they want to give me that represents what is the failure and success rate of that attorney, or am I going to have my own legal counsel on what? Sidebar. Am I going to have them on retainer already, just in case USCCA takes a dump in my face? Because there's somewhere in their onslaught of legal documentation that they're going to present you with, we refuse. Oh my gosh, if USCCA has done it historically vineyard, I know some of you could get out there right now, type it in on Googly or your dummy box, and you'll find a case to where USCCA has done that. Dropped their client, left them hanging in the wind like a broken possum tail in a tree. Education and awareness. Legal professionals and law enforcement may have benefit from training to better understand and address the challenges posed by sovereign citizens. Do you think that's just sovereign citizens are spooky? Or is it some sovereign citizens are the onslaught of the judicial doctrine, knowing how to protect, knowing how to argue the phenomenon, the problem, the gray area, the hidden area, the misinterpretation, historical set precedent, framework that was used retardedly, retardative framework, argued incorrectly, inadequately, and that a judiciary review final decision was made, and it's wrong. I would assume that's why, I don't know, let me think. I don't know, appeal? If you can argue it correctly, self-representation and or let's say you are a USCCA and they drop you and you have, a lawyer on retainer and you get your lawyer involved and your lawyer actually goes through and onslaughts USCCA, you and your attorney onslaught the court, you're victorious and now suddenly you're victorious in there and now USCCA had no grounds or no stand. Now it's USCCA has deep pockets. Civil. Oh my God, you think USCCA would be like, oh, we need to have a better understanding of sovereignty and sovereign citizens and how they can argue for themselves, jurisdictionally, legally, and judicial review, and set precedent framework, credibility, reliability, and actually pull from all districts of the court, federal, 1 through 12, and all the way up to the Supreme Court, argue it down for opinion and decision, and then come crucify us as an insurance company. Yeah, their butt is going to tighten up that tight, that quick. Sovereignty is here. my fellow citizens, it's here. Knowing when, what, where, how, why. The education factor, the knowledge factor. It's kind of like the old question, what's better, 6'5" Creedmoor, PRC, or Lapua? It depends on how much money you want to spend, right? Depends on how tough your shoulder is. Which optic is better? Can argue that all day. MOA, MIL, MRAD, which is better? You got to be able to argue the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in both, and come out with the positive and the negative, and then be victorious on it. Everybody wants that cookie. Got to earn it. So, questions, comments, send them. SabucoProtonMail.com. Next Wednesday, we're going to be back, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for part 3. Remember, this is a solid introduction to sovereignty. This is not a positive. This is not a negative. This is not a good. This is not a bad. This is not a reflection on sovereignty, sovereign citizens, the movement, law enforcement, the government. It's to understand what sovereignty is and how it is used, understanding the movement, the single citizen. Because of the entities of judiciary review understand, and law enforcement is starting to understand, education and awareness and training needs to be applied to understand what sovereignty is and the articulation of it is, since law enforcement applies itself as sovereign. Yes, law enforcement agencies apply themselves as sovereign agencies with jurisdictional review, what one can do and what one can't do. Think of a sheriff's department as, I don't know, compared to a police department, or if you're in a region or district of a state that has metropolitan, where the sheriff and the police and everybody all work together and they're all called metropolitan. Oh my goodness, people just threw a whole freaking fire hose out there of sovereignty, inter, sovereignty. Oh my goodness, crossing boundaries, aren't we? If you got those questions, you've got those ideas, you've got those deep thoughts and those deep topics of sovereignty, send them. There's the email. So, without further ado, remember, next Wednesday is going to actually be number 3. And without further ado, we got other stuff coming. Like I said, my friend Sabuco's coming back real soon. Watch this.
An ACM Live World Premiere. Sunday, August 17th, 7:15 p.m. Central Standard Time. Sabuco the White, Disassociation and You, It's Not a Personality Disorder.
He is the one who found the pathway to inner self-mind control before the mountain monks even knew that ability existed.
He is the man who trained with the Yetis in the Himalayas.
He spent prolonged periods of time researching medical forensics. And now, he is here to guide you in your journey of self-betterment, both physical and mental. Sabuco the White.
Welcome to ACM Live with your host, Sabuco. The man smarter than me, and he could have done